My name is Joe Kobuthi. I'm the curator at the Elephant. I'm here. I'm here as a part of one of the writers for this research compendium on social accountability.
How do non-state actors and citizens participate directly in political processes?
So I think non-state actors and citizens participate in political processes directly or indirectly. Directly through what you call the legitimate political process, like they vote, they vote, they picket, they vote, they picket, they participate in the political economy. They buy goods, they pay their taxes, etc. That's directly. But indirectly, which is I think is the point to emphasize, is by also their inertness or non-action towards particular things. Say, for instance, when politicians are campaigning for elections, but the fact that the electorate takes goodies or monies, that's an indirect participation which affects social accountability measures in the country.
So talking about that, the public, the elections, that is indirectly and all this kind of stuff, yeah. But when you're wanting to hold people accountable, they are held sometimes private in a private sphere. How do you ensure that? What are the risks of holding these particular private accountability and social accountability talks in a private sphere?
When accountability happens within the realm of the private sphere, what that does is that the very idea of the public, the very idea of the public sphere is privatized. It means that the philosophical idea of the commons, which is men and women coming together to make public decisions for the public good, is privatized. It means increasingly for a country, you're moving from a state to a company, and a company, as we're told recently by the deputy president, is a shareholder company. It means citizens who don't have the power to access private spaces are left out of important policy decisions and political practice.
So you've talked about now, it becomes now a company, yeah? But you know that as Kenya is acting on this particular private sphere, now it becomes a matrix. And this matrix mostly is a colonial kind of matrix, yeah? And in your book, you have stated that this kind of public sphere, it is a governance, is just a front activity. You call it a front activity, quote unquote. What do you mean by this?
So when the norms that govern social accountability are distorted, deep democracy and democratic governance becomes distorted. So the mainstay political practice and action of political activity is plunder. So corruption becomes the order of the day. Wheeler dealing becomes the mainstay. People go into government to eat. Hence the John Githongo's famous quote is "a turn to eat." So that becomes the mainstay. So it's really up to us to reorganize, but also to rethink how our public sphere works, such that deep democracy can become enrooted within our political culture.
Yeah, so we have seen this colonial matrix and power of matrix, yeah? Are Kenyans able to create their own matrix, and how can they be able to create this particular matrix and get away from the colonial matrix and the colonial rule?
So I think the question is not for Kenyans to create their own matrix, but it's really to engage in what other scholars have called a decolonial, a delinking process. So you have to delink away from these matrices to be able to, if using the analogy of the movie The Matrix, you have to get out of the matrix through a delinking processes and this delinking process is engaging in different ways of thinking, ways of knowledge systems, ways of thinking about our political and social life differently from the pre-existing orders that we have been under for the last couple of centuries.
Yeah, so there are these things that we call the moral language, yeah, that we have grown knowing. We have grown knowing these social norms, yeah. How are they appropriated and distorted the social accountability that we Kenyans and citizens can be able to practice?
So I think the key way in which these social norms and moral language have been appropriated, in which we can, I think the best way is to give an example. So, for instance, you have well-meaning Kenyans who organize chamas and funerals, mashakayas, all these things. But within that space, rarely do we see these Kenyans stealing money or stealing from each other. In fact, after whatever social activity is conducted, there's always a chairman who comes, calls the people, and the chama is closed, and the surplus is given back to the committee to what to do with it. But in the same vein, if it within the now in the political life, in the public sphere, you find the same individuals appropriating the language of the public sphere for self-gain. So a good moral language has been used is every time when we meet someone on the streets and all of a sudden they have made money, you don't know how they've made quickly, how they respond to you, say Nigod Maze. So the idea of Nigod Maze, you've appropriated moral language, the idea of a divine blessing you, but within nihilistically is that you're corrupt, or you're an entrepreneur, or you're in money laundering. But the appropriation of Nigod Maze has lessened the kind of illegal but also immoral activities that you're undertaking.
Definitely. Isn't this now the Kenyan matrix when you talk about the chamas, now how they handle the chairperson? Is this the Kenyan matrix that you're supposed to be forming instead of the colonial kind of matrix?
So again, I don't think it's the word matrix. I mean, because it's more hegemony. Yeah. So and I think Kenyans need to be moving towards freedom and not trying to appropriate part of another power system. But I agree absolutely. So I think. That process is just a way of showing that the problem is, in my view, has never been Kenyans, but the spaces and the space that we occupy. Because in their own private spheres, they don't operate that way. But why is it that in a different space, there is a sense of psychic turbulence, a kind of duality in their mannerism, a kind of split personality disorder? So it means, to my mind, it means that we need to delink from these processes and start thinking and rethinking who we are as human beings, who we are, how do we want to live with each other, how do we want to think of ourselves in a way to delink from the existing colonial matrix of power.
Yeah, I know this is not your sector, but I want to ask it because it was mentioned by the other report, who is Faith. Faith said that now we need using political players. It's a risk, yeah. But for you say that using power and now politics is one of the ways that you can be able to go in terms of now creating philosophical ideas that can be able to bring change and social accountability. Where do you think we can draw the line between now using politics as a risk area where politicians are known for stealing money and be able to use them for social accountability?
So there's a famous quote that says that democracy dies when democracy is fragile, and the price for democracy is eternal vigilance. So I mean, it's a murky world and there are many contradictions, but again, we all have to act in accordance to how we are engaging within the matrix of power. And as to conclude, as I just to start with, is that the price for democracy is eternal vigilance. So we'll have to be vigilant eternally, depending on where we are operating, and knowing that something is strategic, something is tactical, and there's a lot of nuance when we are thinking about these things. So not to cast judgment to other people who are in this political space, but to really realize that it's a complicated world, and we are unraveling from a very complicated system that has not benefited us.
Thank you so much for talking to us.
Tunaona, tunasikia na tutabonga. The voice.